So here we are again. Welcome back. This is the beginning of Block 10. We've talked some about civil engineering. We've talked about how civil engineering really has 7 aspects, structures, soils, environmental, transportation, hydrology, construction management, and surveying. So we talked about each of those in some depth. And this block gives us a chance to sort of give it a deep dive, to go in and look real hard at one particular area and some tools in the toolbox of a civil engineer. So I'll show a few of these, and we can look at them, and I think you know what these are. These are trusses, very common tools used in civil engineering to carry load. This looks like a pedestrian bridge, maybe a vehicular bridge, truss bridge. If I back go forward, this is definitely a roof truss, probably made out of steel. We have here some wooden roof trusses. This is definitely probably a timber roof truss, and these are either floor trusses or roof trusses made out of steel. And here's another picture of a truss. Looks like a timber truss, and yet that one doesn't look quite right, does it? Oh, another pile of trusses which also don't look right. A truss that doesn't look right. Here we have a failed truss again. So what I wanted to do is put some pictures together of what happens if we don't actually understand trusses well. This is a bridge on I-35, which I-35 runs through Texas. In this case, this bridge was in Minneapolis on I-35, and this happened to that bridge. And while most of the time in this class I try to be very upbeat, very excited, this is not exciting. This is what happens when bad things happen in civil engineering, especially when we think about structural engineering, which trusses kind of fit into that structural engineering portion. In structural engineering, when we don't do our jobs correctly, this can happen. People die. The I-35 bridge in Minneapolis collapsed a few years ago, and people died. So this was a photo of some of the rescue efforts of that terrible event, and this picture really gets to me. I imagine this woman sitting there with one shoe on and one shoe off, driving to work that morning or that afternoon, and this is how her day ended. When bad things happen in civil engineering, especially in structures, people die. So as part of our deep dive, if you will, we're going to look at trusses and try to understand them a little bit better and give you some very beginning tools about how to analyze a truss and decide that is not going to happen. They recovered that truss and laid out the wreckage in a city park in Minneapolis to start to figure out what happened in that event. So that's just a little bit of motivation for why we want to look at trusses and why we really need to actually understand them. And we're gonna dive into some fundamentals of force systems and that sort of thing, and so that we can actually figure out how to analyze a truss and figure out whether it can take the forces that we're asking it to take. That's the goal with this deep dive. So the first thing that we're going to do as we talk about trusses and the background information that we need is to talk about forces. I think you've probably seen forces before and you have an idea in your mind about what a force is, but I want to make sure we're real clear about what a force is. A force is something that has both magnitude and direction. So when we talk about a force, I know I can pull on something with a given force, push on something with a given force. That has both magnitude and direction, and that seems like a very awkward way of describing something. But I'm convinced that you already understand in your own mind that forces really do have magnitude and direction. And I'm going to prove that to you by playing tug of war. So here I am. I said that we'd play tug of war. I got my handy dandy rope. I'm going to start pulling on it. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull Brian here right into the frame. Brian's been helping me get these videos. He's the man behind the plan. And really helping me hopefully get good content out to you. But in this case, it's really hard to play tug of war with just one person. So Brian's going to help out. And as we play tug of war, think about it for a minute. You can probably guesstimate that Brian and I weigh, give or take, the same amount. I'll tell you, I weigh about 190.
190.
So we actually weigh about the same amount, and yet here I can pull, and if I pull a lot, I can pull him toward me and make him move, right? And you can imagine, if you will, that, okay, let's say I pull Brian with 50 pounds. And Brian weighs 190, and I weigh 190. So if we added 190 and 190 together, what would we get? We'd get 380, right? But you can imagine that if I'm pulling with 50, do you think it's fair for me to say my 380, Brian and I, and plus my 50? Am I going to add that all together and say that the total force in the system is 380 plus 50 is 430 pounds? You know you're not going to do that, that makes no sense. Even if I pull Brian with 200 pounds, I'm not going to add that 200 to my 190 and get 390. That doesn't make sense. That's not how forces work. And why is that? Well, what direction does Brian's weight act? What direction does my weight act? This is a trick question, right? What direction does gravity act? And you'd be amazed and surprised how many people get this question wrong. What direction does Brian act? Or Brian, what direction does gravity act, Brian?
Down.
Brian, who is not an engineer, got this answer totally correct. The correct answer is always gravity acts down. And I'll show you in a minute why engineering students sometimes get that wrong. You would think gravity, down, right? And you would be right. But when we get complex, sometimes we get stupid. The right answer is gravity acts down. So what direction am I pulling here? Am I pulling down? I'm not. I'm pulling to the side. So I'm not going to add a sideways force to my weight going down. This is because forces have both a magnitude. If I pull at 50 pounds, the magnitude is 50 pounds, but also a direction. This direction is horizontal, side to side. My weight is up and down. Forces have both a magnitude and a direction. It's very important. And I mentioned that gravity acts down, and I'm going to give you a little insight into a course you're going to get much later in your career. But let's say I have a roof here, and snow falls on it, right? Snow falls on my roof. That's my red snow. Boy, that's a problem if that happens. But let's say it piles up on the roof. I got a pile of snow on the roof, right? What direction does that force act, the weight of that snow? It's a trick question again, right? The weight's going to act down, right? There's the weight of that snow. What we'll see sometimes is that some students will look at the roof line and they'll look at the snow and they'll say that, hey, I can see it, Dr. McGinnis, the force acts that way, right? Well, sorry, gravity acts down. So that pink W there, that's the correct answer. Gravity acts down. The snow does not act toward the roof, it acts down. So I'm going to pause there for now, and then we'll jump into a new topic.